Hola.
Hello there. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Now,
Excited for this.
where
I've
are
been
you
wanting to
in
talk to
Canada?
you for about 2 years.
Are you?
So I've been wanting to talk to you for about two
Oh,
years. So
great. So where are you in Canada?
I am in Vancouver Island, so very,
Oh,
very near Victoria.
are you near Hollyhock?
I've never heard of Hollyhock. Where's that?
That's the very tip of Vancouver Island. That's where they have the retreat.
Oh, strange. I've never heard of it. My wife was born in Bullberg, which I thought was the very tip. It was an old military base, but maybe Hollyhock's further north. Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'd gone there several times. Eckhart Tolle had some retreats there. And then I worked with some of the people that actually have worked in the retreat center itself. It's similar to Brighton Bush, which is a retreat center in Oregon, kind of outside of Portland, but it's on Vancouver Island. So are you more on the southern tip near Victoria?
Yeah, we're have you ever been on the island before? Or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so you're probably familiar with where Sydney is, where the ferry terminal is, the big ferry.
yes.
So we're right in the middle between the ferry terminal and Victoria. If you've been here before, you've probably been to the Butchart Gardens.
Oh, I love them. That's why I would go. I mean, the Bouchard Gardens are extraordinary.
Yeah, so our previous house, our backyard literally was the road leading to it. So the buses would go
Oh
by
my
every 5
God.
minutes. So, but we now live about 15 minutes from there. So
So do you go to the gardens for inspiration?
I, well, that's a good question. I would have said no, I avoided the gardens, but I feel differently now. When I don't know, before 3 years ago, the gardens would have been a nuisance. It would have been like, why am I here? What am I doing? Now nature's a big part of it. So yeah, but I haven't got an annual membership. I mean, there's beautiful trees everywhere here. I don't have to go very far. So,
hmm
but
So it's interesting. I loved when you shared that date because that was your Chiron return.
mhm.
And so between having the 360 and the 6124, that would not only change your direction, but it would also bring in psychological changes and just experiences coming to you that were very different to respond to.
For sure. My Chiron return was within, I think, 2 weeks of the day I went up island for a shamanic retreat where I did MDMA on the Friday, massive dose of mushrooms on the Saturday, and was introduced to human design on the Sunday. So it was
Oh
quite
my
the
gosh.
weekend.
Oh
So
my gosh. But that's perfect that when people talk about, what is the Chiron return, and I'll say, well, they don't have it in astrology, but it's so essential to understand, a phase in life. And even though I remember with Ross saying, well, because I'd signed up for a Chiron return reading with him, and I remember he said, well, this is really for 6 lines, but then he went into, my Chiron. And he had said, well, it's very late for your Chiron. And he said, oh, no, it's not. I see something else in your design. And then like, no, it's not. I can see why you're having a Chiron return. So it's interesting in so many of Ra's teachings, because he could see subtleties, he would see the dilemmas that would be created when there were certain factors in your chart that would say one thing, but something else said something else. And he was able to know which had greater weight, which had greater impact. And so when I, looked at your design, I said, oh, I see the connection here and the rightness of your winning the lottery, you know. Because it's interesting, my Chiron return, also being a Sphinx, but my Chiron return, my sun Earth is 13.3 and 7.3. That's my design for the Chiron.
oh wow.
In my regular chart, I'm 13 line 4 and 7 line 4 because I'm a Sphinx, I'm a Taurus.
Mhm.
So I understand the cross of the Sphinx, and I'll say it with great affection. It's probably Ra always felt that the cross of laws was the most difficult because it had the 360, the mutative effect. That was most of all the 768 incarnation crosses. Cross of laws were the toughest, but he said the Sphinx was the hardest. He said, it's just hard. It's hard this way. It's hard that way. It's hard this way. And you know James Dean, right? You know
James Dean's?
James Dean's?
Yes, I do.
He was at the
Projector?
retreat, yeah, and he's a
Mm.
Sphinx too. And it was funny because I said that to him maybe a year ago. He didn't register. And then he sent me an email maybe 3 months ago. He said, "Oh, I can see it. Now I see it." And I said, "Good. Now you're really deconditioning."
Hmm. That, so many things you just said there I have to respond to. One is that at last year's Human Design Conference, because I went last year and I went this previous year, I was going to do a talk on my Chiron return. Like I thought, I want to share what I've learned so far. Nobody showed up. I mean, the whole vibe there is so casual, and so like nobody came. I just sat there
Yeah.
for 40 minutes and thought, oh, I guess oh well.
Yeah.
And then James rolled in, and then this woman, Andy, rolled in, a reflector, and both were Sphinxes, and I'm a Sphinx. And we end up having what we call an instant Sphinx convention. It was such a cool conversation, but it happened right after dealing with, well, I guess nobody wants to hear my story. Like it
Yeah.
was quite humiliating, and then all of a sudden, wow, that's really synchronous and interesting. So
Hmm.
you said something earlier, something about the right turn and winning the lottery or something. What did you mean by
Oh
that?
no, when you won a reading with me
Mm.
and you enrolled in a lottery, I said, but
Oh,
of
yeah,
course,
raffle, yeah, yeah. Mhm,
yeah, the raffle, of
mhm,
course, because I'm a Sphinx. So you
mm,
look at you look at the trajectory that in human design, it is no choice. So things are set up and you have the shattering, the 66 different fractal lines, and that people come to you irregardless of their intention, their longing, or I've got to do this. It's always lined up with timing and are they on your fractal? And so that was
mm.
beautiful what you shared that nobody was there, but then these two sphinxes show up. And that was probably shocking, but then very rewarding for all three of you. And I remember David Icke when he said he started teaching, and Ra when they started teaching, and Eckhart, they'd show up, there'd be one person or no one. And David Icke talks about the first time he talked to no one for like 7 or 8 hours. but but he had a platform and he was going to do it. Now he has filled arenas, that have to be secret. So it's just kind of the unfolding of your process. But the Sphinx, you always have a role. Whether someone shows up or not, you have a role.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging. It's also really cool to know that Kurt totally has been on the island here. There is an energy around here for sure, like a magnetic pull of sorts. I'm having all sorts of synchronistic events, and I'm letting go with trying to plan anything. I just kind of get up each day and see what unfolds. So,
Now
and
it's interesting because that would indicate to me that you've been deeply affected by the DMT, the mushrooms, the human design, because it puts you in a position of trust your response, that you don't have to initiate, that everything comes towards you. And that's the biggest problem. When I saw your design, I said, whoa, you're really equipped for the future where we're moving, in a very profound way. And also the fact that your sun and earth is not designed as a um, as a sleeping phoenix because you have, the 2034, but rather that 2034 is designed in a different way. In the Neptune, it's more veiled. That power is more veiled. Can't see it, but it's there. And
mhm,
you have that 34/6, which is common sense. Common sense when it comes, common sense, just wait to respond and then initiate.
mhm,
Um, but it's interesting that that's um, unconscious. It's conscious and unconscious, but it's Neptune, and Neptune just veils everything. It's very hard to really
mhm,
see it. But then you have gate 20, which I always look for because as a Sphinx, you have, the 1333, the 1/8, the 731, and then you are like wired with the 1020. And so much of your design is the timing of things, even though you're not on the wave, but that unconscious 20 is all about It's not what we mean by wisdom, but it's really seeing something as it is, being very practical.
Mhm.
And as a 3-5, you have to be practical.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes, as a manifesting generator, you have this beautiful quality because you're 2, again, that 1-5 and the 2-5. What do you do artistically? I just have to throw it here because that even, okay, I'm looking at it, I'm saying you've got the 29-46. So that means you say yes, and you can be very existential, beginning something, really getting involved, allowing the cycle to happen, experiencing what you're experiencing. Was it correct? Was it not correct? And that gate 46 is the 4th line. So it means that you're here to master relationships. And of course, you're Aquarius. So you've got to master the relationships because the Aquarian is someone who leaves the group. And then you master something and take it back to the group. And so you're not absorbed in the group. You're someone who becomes the leader of the group. And you have the 731, which is the leader. So you
Mhm.
have 4 leadership indications, leadership in terms of reflection, oversight, accounting, leadership in terms of higher wisdom, because that's fueling, that's the fork, the handle, it's gate 2, line 5, higher wisdom. And then the artist being your own public relations person. And then the alpha, which means that you have to, and that's very conscious. That's the one that's, that's what's conscious in you. And it's not veiled. And so when I looked at gate 31, I said, what's 31, 31, 31? Where is it? And so I said, oh, it's in your environment, that your intention in leadership has to be understood for people to follow you. The intention is everything. It's in your environment that you are to be a leader, and you you are to take people on an adventure, through your guidance. And it's kind of that 41 is extremely creative. That feeds into the 1-8 is the artist, extremely creative, because it allows you to imagine just about anything. And people say it can be fantasy or psychology, but it's also one of the gates of love. So it's the love of adventure, it's the love of fantasizing. And so you look at, the North Node where you are now, it's a way to be a leader, to take people on an adventure, to see things in a different way. You're a realist, but still there's a way to see things from a different perspective that other people could see as fantasy. So I'll give you an example. Let's say Eckhart Tolle. It's perfect example when he says when someone is dealing out shit to you and they're yelling at you and they're bullying you, just become transparent. Let it go through you and don't react. And yet there'll be some people that are fighters, and that's not appropriate for them. They're going to fight back because that's going to be their natural response. But so they're all different levels of responding to something. And what's interesting in your design, you're going to say yes to life. You're yes person, and you're going to get into that experience. And you don't know if the leadership's coming out, the creative leadership, are you going to end up listening, or do you have to share with someone, hey, look, this is really what's going on? And then to top it, you have the whistleblower personality, where you're someone who people either like you or they'll say, oh, Sean's coming. Let's make an excuse. Only because of your power in your aura. When you have the full integration channels, I mean, this is extraordinary. I mean, you when you saw your design, whoever read it, they probably had to say this is quite extraordinary, correct?
I've heard that a lot. Like, one of my actually, I had a Chiron return design or reading from Lavina Archers 2 years
Mhm.
ago, and it wasn't in person; it was recorded. But
Mhm.
4 times during it, she said, "You have a really interesting design." Like she kept saying that and emphasizing that, and she didn't say why, but
Mhm.
it meant a lot at the time. And I was trying to understand what was going on. I felt different. I felt like I stood out, but it was, yeah,
Mhm.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. So basically you could say, I would, if I were trying to put this in a espresso cup of coffee, you are a pure individual who has some sort of obligation to the collective to listen to what is needed and at the same time provide direction for the future. Because again, embedded within the Sphinx is time, past, present, future. And how do you navigate the synthesis of those three dimensions? Now, someone will say everything's in the present moment. And Ra even says about that channel that you have, the 4629, existential simply means that you are in the present moment. Even though it's abstract and experiential, the cycle is still there. So you have to go through beginning, middle, and end. And if you're not present, there's no past. There's no past that you can go back to because you weren't present to pick up the nuances to talk about it, what we perceive as later in the past. So even though this your generative response is through that existential process and that spontaneity of being busy, 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 it's still focused to empower other people through your direction. And this is what makes it so unusual is you look at your chart quickly and you see, oh, collective 731, collective 1333, collective 2946, nothing tribal with this guy. But then you see that I always say at the handle of other channels of the integration. And that means that you have survival instincts and can see things that other people can't see. And you're a quad left. And I want to speak a little bit about the quad left. I'm a quad left. The beauty of the quad left is you have the capability to focus very, very deeply. And out of that focus, you can pull details in that other people cannot pull in. Because remember, the quad right, you're just going there, you're taking information in that's a resource for others through asking the quad right questions. For you, no, you're focusing very, very deeply to find something about that other people can't find. And even though people will talk about the quad left in derogatory terms because the soup du jour is quad right. I'm the new thing. But if you look at, this isn't a chart of the variables. I don't have one. But if this were a chart of the variables, the quad left would be up here, the quad right would be here. You see, we're in a spiral dynamic of evolution, and these connect. The quad right and quad left. When I meet a quad right, they're usually the CEOs, they're very organized, they're talking about this. I'm saying, wait, you're quad right. And I talk to the quad lefts, they're meditating, they're doing plant medicine, they're trying to pick up everything in the universe. We can call that transference, but my experience is what the quad left can do is really focus on something in a very extraordinary way. Now, let's go back to you being an Aquarius. Gate 13, what really stands out in your design, extraordinary power. See, your design has consistent power. You're to survive. You're also to refine and to uplift people through this 1057, which is spontaneous recognition in the moment of how can I improve this? Oh, this recipe needs more salt. This is too many white flowers. Let's put a blue flower here. You'll always have this notice of something has to be improved here. And you can be a real pain in the ass for some people because it's like, can you just leave it alone? And you're like, no, I know that it's going to work better this way. And then the other thing that you might find being pulled back is you can think on your feet. You can move very quickly. No, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do because it hits you very quickly. But because you have situational awareness, you're also someone who's going to be very aware in your passage in human design. How are you being affected by the emotional field around you? People that are pulling you and or this, you're nobody's victim. See, you have a strength of direction that can empower people by your very presence because you're someone who's not going to take shit from anybody. That's very important because you're not someone, you're designed in your astrology to experience power plays in relationships. You've got Pluto opposite Venus. Your Pluto is Libra. Let's see, and your Venus is Pisces, but there's still there's an opposition that goes on in your chart. Let me see for a minute here. Just want to see something here. You've got Venus opposite Pluto. Now, astrologically, Venus is in the 5th house of creativity. But again, as a Scorpio rising, there's a real intensity to that, to you. So when you deliver a message, it's going to be very powerful. I think that's what makes your chart unusual, because it's so important to sit back and don't push the river and let everything come to you, because you're designed to empower anyone without them really knowing it. When I say without them really knowing it, see, your voice is very powerful. The vocalizing of your wisdom in the moment, your vocalizing of this is the direction that we have to go. I mean, you're not going to be pushed around. And for a Sphinx, I spoke to a Sphinx this morning. She was a 1-3. She had one channel, the 1-8. And she's just coming into human design. She only has 2 centers that are defined, which are the throat and the G center. But her real problem are people's emotions. See, you're wide open emotionally. You're wide open at the root. You're wide open. Wow. You're wide open in the ego center. How does that work for you? You have nothing pointing to that. How does that work?
It's been brutal, but it's changed my life understanding that. So I had I'm a 3-5, and that would resonate with me really early, because I just seemed to let everyone down everywhere, and I let it define me until I was 50. I was a doormat. I used to say to people, I hated the term nice guys need to or finish last. I was like determined to prove that wasn't true, but all I did is let people walk all over me. So there's been a number of things that have changed for me, and simple things like I'm nice to people who treat me with respect. Like I have to remind myself of little things like that shifted a lot. But that open heart, I didn't think I was worthy to anyone anywhere, including myself. And that has shifted so much now that it's a superpower. I also learned that, like that 13 is like this gate of the listener. And I used to not be able to listen. I was so eager to add value that by the time I was so quick to know what to do to fix things, that you would be talking and I didn't hear anything you said, because I was trying to remind myself again in my head, like, tell her this, tell her this, tell her this, that I didn't hear what you said. And so I ended up being a terrible listener, and I felt bad that I didn't hear what you just said. So it was through a plant medicine experience, like a men's retreat, where it was like a weekend of it and we were all immersed in it. And I realized there that I wasn't listening. We do this circle, everyone was talking, and the whole time I was rehearsing in my head what I wanted to say and what I wanted to say to that guy and this guy and this guy to help them. And something hit me where I realized I need to listen with my heart. And what that meant was shutting up. And then so it was shutting up, but also shutting off that voice it was just such a negative self-talk in my head that it was all consuming. Like my mind is quiet these days. Like I physically feel like the inside of my head is two empty triangles.
Beautiful.
Whereas before it was just a swirling toilet of shit. So huge. The open heart almost killed me, but now it's a superpower. So
beautiful. And when your sun is in gate 13 and your Venus is exalted in Pisces, that's a dilemma, in the sense that when Venus is in Pisces, there's a real empathic quality that you have for people, because you can merge. You're designed as an empath. And in the human design wheel, the first quarter of purpose fulfilled through ideas, through mind, that's yours. But the first gate is 13. It starts at the Sphinx gate. And gate 13 is all about the empath. That's the foundation, the fail-safe mechanism that you're going to feel what other people feel. So you could say that you were sensing their need for a solution because you have gate 19. Remember, that's the That's the pressure for the whole mystical circuitry. And you have gate 19. And gate 19, and then you have 10, 20. So you have a channel and a gate to the, you could say to the destiny that you will have a mystical experience. Let's put it that way. But there's unconsciously in you, gate 19 is in the environment where you want to be in service. That's where you are now, but it's in service in the way where you can lead people on an adventure, but you're not the one you're empowering them, but you're not supporting them.
Mm.
See, you're not tribal, you're not to support, you're to empower through who you are, through the wisdom that you've gained. Now, what's also, when I saw your chart, I saw it was interesting because you're a 3-3-3-3. In other words, your sun is gate 13, line 3. Your earth is gate 7, line 3. Your color is 3. Your tone is 3. So we got a lot of trial and error going on, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of bumping into things. Now, what's interesting is you've got a 1, 2, you only have 2 other 3s. But what that means is that you really have to master the energies around you. It's not just up here. You have to really experience it. You have to know the frequency because you have that open heart and solar plexus and root and ajna and head. You're going to be very gifted at picking up the energies of the environment, the emotional energies, the demands that they're placing on you to be consistent or to prove yourself. You're going to pick that all up. And then the pressure to get rid of that and work really quickly. So let's go back to gate 13 with the empath. It means that the human design turns it around and says, okay, you're very empathic. You really have an exalted Venus, but it has to be turned toward yourself first so you can deal with the rejection, the manipulation, the emotional control of anything by other people. And the vulnerability is both the solar plexus and the ego that you've learned. And in that learning, the reason it becomes wisdom is you're also someone to remain, and this is one of your greatest gifts that you would encounter, is the ability to remain cool when other people are emotionally distressed or having a difficult time. You have the energy with that full integration imprint to be calm and not be pushed over like a tumbleweed. Let's manipulate.
Mm.
Do you find that so?
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the last, like I woke up today, I've had a solid, like I've had a really great week. And it's just so many things clicking into place. So it's even just nice getting a summary to start the week. Because I just woke up this morning going like, damn, I feel like I haven't woken up and felt good in a long time. And it's becoming a regular occurrence and something I can rely on. And it's all the work I've been doing. It's energy management, clearing energy, defining my focusing on health. I mean, I obliterated my body for the first 50 years. I always knew what I was supposed to do, but always resisted it. And I still do. I still will choose a scotch over a glass of water, even if I'm feeling shitty. Like, and in my head going, this is dumb. What are you doing? And I'll still just do it. So I still wrestle with things, but the awareness is there, and there's just a stubbornness. So.
Also, you're Canadian and it's cold. Whiskey.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, because I'm, you know what? I would otherwise reach for coffee or hot chocolate, but I never thought of it. I always thought of whiskey as high sugar and feeding anxiety, but maybe that's a misconception. So.
Yeah, I would say, because I was at St. Andrews in Scotland, and my my partner at the time, he was doing golf and I was kind of following, and I said, 18 holes? That's like 18 shots in a bottle of whiskey. That's how they figured the 18 holes, because you can go through a bottle. Yeah, it's 18 shots in a bottle of whiskey. And I said, this is the worst golf course. This is cold and rainy. No wonder they needed whiskey to warm them up to make it through the whole game. And they
Mhm.
probably want to just be outside when it's hard to be outside in Scotland in many seasons. So I always think of whiskey as a northern drink to
Mhm.
warm you up. I think of bourbon as a southern drink to kind of knock you out with the heat.
Mhm. Well, I'm from, like, my parents are from Liverpool and Glasgow. I'm Whitey McWhiterson and very British Commonwealth background, actually.
Yes,
Not in
yes,
vibe anymore. But yeah, no, I'm definitely from there.
yeah.
My
See, I
family
don't.
is from Fife, which I think St. Andrews is very close to, if not.
Okay, there you go. There you go. It's in your blood. I don't
Mhm.
see, anything reasonable. I'm not a drinker, but I do appreciate the medicine that certain alcohol can bring. And I do
Mhm.
to pharmaceuticals. So I view whiskey as something that can really warm you up and kind of prevent colds because it's
Mhm.
kind of a, antiseptic, but it just warms you up and it kills just about anything. But it's always the intention behind why you're drinking it. Now, you do have gate 55. So gate 55 is a sugar gate. And
Okay.
it's all about the spirit. How do you connect to the spirit in life? And yours is about selfishness. When I say selfishness, it's really about understanding that, as an individual, which I'm going to say that you are really, really, really more of an individual than anything else, is that you have to protect yourself in whatever way that you have to protect yourself. You
Mm.
feel the spirit. And that's why whiskey can help lift your spirit as long as you don't take too much. So,
Interesting. Yeah, I came to the conclusion not long ago that reminding myself that it is a spirit. It can give you spirit, but can also take it away. And so
mhm,
it's a balance. Because
mhm,
I was a full-on alcoholic
mhm,
3.5 years ago. And it's kind of what drove me to getting help.
mhm.
And then I've always wrestled with, do I stop permanently? And it's just never felt like I have a different relationship with it now. Um,
Mhm,
which is interesting that I was able to turn that around. I thought I needed to be a non-drinker, and that it still doesn't
mhm.
really sit with me. So I appreciate even just that take on it, because I wrestle with that one quite a bit, like almost like feeling shame that I still have a drink. But
No.
it's I think it is correct for me when it's correct for me.
You'll notice you don't have addiction in your chart. I can read it in the astrology chart. And that's where Neptune makes a square to Mars. And it simply means your individuated spirit can be overwhelmed by a greater, we call it a greater spirit. So when you feel like you want to have whiskey, you just take a deep breath and you just say, oh, is it going to comfort me? Is it going to warm me up? Is it a health benefit? It's just the awareness before you interact. Because with
Mhm.
Gate 55, when I would teach a lot of classes, I'd ask people who had Gate 55, how many of you have eating or food disorders or, sugar disorders, which can be alcohol? 100% raise their hands. 100%.
Mhm.
Because what it is, it's Gate 55. That's the spirit of the time that we're moving into.
Mhm.
Spirit, it's one of, the 55, 59. But for you, the spirit is so important, connecting to the spirit, because your gate 55 is in your Mars. It's in your Mars. And we know Mars is a hot, fiery planet. It's immature, but it is how you individuate and separate from the group, from your family, from the demands of society to become yourself.
Mhm.
And so you have to align yourself to the truth. And that's why I can see with the DMT and the mushrooms and all that, you're identifying to you could say cosmic consciousness, or the rightness of who you are, the correctness of who you are, that there's not a problem. It's just the not self and the conditioning that's fighting against the full exploration deeper for you into who you are, but you're in that exploration now. But also so you can fulfill your purpose as a guide. And you're someone who's to be recognized as someone who's truly creative. And
Mm.
and I thought this guy's a tough guy. And then I said, no, he's a 3'5" and he has gate 19. This is a dilemma. And he's an ego, because you look and you can make assumptions with things, but then I say, no, he just has the power in awakening to stand on his own and not be bullied or intimidated by other people.
That's so interesting. So before you met me, you saw in the body graph potentially a tough guy, is what you said. That's so interesting. Like, I absolutely know now. I think I've always known how powerful I was, but I was too much for most people. I was extra. I was, dulling my shine my entire life.
Mhm.
And now I absolutely recognize the power, but to me it's for me. And so I
Yes.
use it with discernment, discretion, and always tied to my core values. So, and what I mean by that is like being in integrity. Like I realize how powerful I could be, and it scared me at
Mhm.
times. Like there have been a
Oh,
few moments
yeah.
in life where I was like, "Holy cow! It's a good thing I had control." I had someone in my life that I want to be respectful of your time because we had half an hour and we're already
Yeah.
7
Let's
hours.
take another 5 minutes and then I have an appointment, but let's keep
Okay,
going. Let's just take.
yeah. I just want to say, like, there was a fellow, I thought he was my best friend, and I struggled with never really having a best friend. So this
Mhm.
narcissist, borderline sociopath, figured me out, and it knocked me on my ass. This is 5, 6 years ago, but it literally took every ounce of wind out of my sail, and I lost all confidence, and I just forgot who I was. And
Mhm.
then he resigned, and the whole weekend came up. All that to say, I was so once I got over worrying about him and it turned to anger, uh, I
Mhm.
was concerned that if I ever saw him in my car, I would lose control, blackout, and drive over him and hit it in reverse and make sure I finished the job. Like I
Mhm.
really thought, I had a sense that I was capable of that. And
Beautiful.
right, it doesn't exist anymore, but it scared the shit out of me and it kind of forced me to look into stuff because I was just like, the power scared me. And that's
Mhm.
not even power, it was more, I don't know, maybe it was power. Like it was just this guy is bad for the planet, period.
Yes. Yes. And see, the key thing is that you had to have that experience to understand the frequency of a sociopath or psychotic. If you don't have that experience, any one of us can be taken over by that because there's a seamlessness in their deception.
Mhm.
And so you don't see it because their frequency doesn't reveal them. That's the thing about it. But there's something about a psychopath or sociopath that when you're with them, if they know how to flatter and pull you in and and use you, you don't know it until you know it. Once you
Mhm.
know it, you could say you've mastered those frequencies. So if someone else comes up to you, you're going to have a feeling there's something off here. And what it is, it's a mastery of the frequency of knowing, being able to read a sociopath or a psychotic and not engaging your energy. And that was beautiful that it happened because it means you're not going to be pulled in that way again because it's
Mhm.
not intellectually saying, oh, how could you not see a psychopath? I'm saying, honey, I can tell you that you haven't been with a psychopath because for you even to say that shows. And I remember I was listening to a interview with a top psychologist in Canada with Jordan Peterson. And the psychologist was a specialist in psychopathology. And he worked with serial killers and was trying to understand their, psychopathology because he couldn't understand psychopaths. So he said he was fooled by 99% of them. He thought they were fine. And, Jordan Peterson, he'd probably come and say, how could that be? But it was fascinating about this psychologist. He set Jordan Peterson up because when they came to the prison, there was a guide who took Jordan Peterson around and he asked Jordan, he said, what'd you think about this guy? And he said, he seems very nice, very polite. And he said, he killed two people and all of that. And Peterson was like, whoa. But it was case in point that I consider it a destructive but a necessary gift to facilitate self-knowing and self-love and protection from the assault from a psychopath, because more people are becoming psychopathic in a lot of ways. And because you're very gifted as a Sphinx to give direction, when someone uses someone like you are going to feel that power come up. But the beauty is until you can recognize, as humans, you could kill another person. You'll never come into the fullness of who you are, because in human design, one thing that Ross said we are vicious animals, and you strip the veneer of civilization off, we're all killer monkeys. And you can see that more and more, but to actually feel it and own it and say, no, I could just rip your head off or drive over you. That's actually very healthy rather than
Yeah.
suppressing it, because you have to process it through and say, oh my God, let me do this, let me do this, let me do that. And that's part of the power of the Sphinx. You have the most dramatic Sphinx chart I've seen. And I've done thousands of readings. And it can be confusing because there's so many different directions that you can offer. But it's in the context of, what do people need? What do people need? Because you have gate 19, that's the environment that you're in unconsciously. What are their needs?
I know we have to go, so I'll ask one question based on that, because it's popped in my head twice now in this conversation. Three of my four Sphinx gates are actually channels. Is that significant? Like the two doesn't, I don't have the 14, but the other three are actually full channels. And I've definitely noticed lots of things about my chart that are different. One is I've not met many quad lefts with a completely open head in ajna. In fact, I just met a woman recently, finally, and I haven't looked at tens of thousands of charts, but definitely hundreds. And I had not seen someone that had such a goldfish bowl up there. And so, oh my God, where was I going with that? Oh,
You have three channels that are defined as a Sphinx. And
yeah. So there's, but that seems fairly unique. The other thing I've noticed about my design is if you look at just my design or just my personality, I seem to be the only chart I've seen where all four centers are still defined. Someone will be a reflector in one, I've not seen that before. And so, and I guess I'll just follow that up with the number of people that have said to me, wow, you have 10 channels. What's that like? And my response was always, I don't know. I feel like I'm a train running off the tracks. Like if that's empowerment, I feel like a hot mess. I would say that has shifted. But it's, there is a lot of, like Lavina said, like I have a very interesting chart and I wish I understood it better. Maybe I do, but.
Okay, here's something that you can self-study with.
Okay.
When you look at your design, look at what planets are activating those channels. Are they conscious or unconscious? So when I saw 34, it was a Neptune. It's very different than if that's your sun. Very different if that were your Venus. But it's hidden. It's more hidden. So you're not going to be connecting to that. When someone says that you have and that's conscious, it's a conscious channel, the 3457. But again, anything, and Ra was very clear on this, anything with Neptune makes it very confusing. So when people say you have 10 channels, it's like, yeah, but a lot of them are unconscious. So 2 out of 3 of the Sphinx channels for you are totally unconscious. You have no access. They're going to work through you, but unless you know them, you're not going to understand their efficacy or how it's used. And then the listening, of course, the listening is trial and error. And you're not going to listen unless someone gives you concrete information to back up what they say. You're not a gullible person. And the artistry really has to be rooted in understanding that your self-worth is connected to how you can contribute to other people. But again, that gate 1, which is so powerful, being able to attract society, that's unconscious in you. You have to just simply, through response, be in the right environment where that recognition can come to you. And so you have 2 out of 3 of the Sphinx channels. Only the alpha is aware, even the 1020 unconscious. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of them, half of them are unconscious.
Mm.
So when someone says, what does it feel like to have 10? You can say, sweetheart, I really just have 5 that I'm conscious of.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, so the one that you're not conscious of is 2946, saying yes to something, or how you listen, or how you're creative, or your awakening process. You do know that you're a survivor, that you have situational awareness, that's conscious. You know that you can only live according to your convictions, what's important to you, and people can view you as selfish, but then that's overridden by your open ego.
Mhm.
You know, so that's a conflict there. And we know that you're here to beautify things, to make them enhance their beauty. You're conscious of that. You're going to find, tone and all of this. And then, the alpha is going to be very conscious. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 channels that are conscious, 4 that are conscious.
Mm.
But
Cool.
ultimately, you're about mastering relationships.
Mhm. Yep.
What you're really about.
Yeah, so it seems. Cool. 2 requests.
Yeah.
One, I'm a big sharer these days. Would it be
Uh-huh.
okay to share this conversation on my YouTube channel, like for people to
Oh,
see
sure.
from you? Because I think
Sure.
folks would benefit from that. And
Mhm.
then that way I can go check back on it and check in.
Yes. That's
And
perfect.
then I do a podcast called Dude Diligence, and I bring people on and just talk about what, improvement in any way. And human
Yeah.
design is a big part of it. Would
Yeah.
you be interested in joining me sometime for one of those?
Sure, I'd love that. I love Sphinx to Sphinx.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. All right. Yeah, thank you very much. That was
Yeah,
a real treat.
you're
So,
very welcome. And
yeah,
and the key for your design is sit back and just watch what comes to you. That's the fun.
so I'm finding it's agonizing at times, but I'm getting better. It's settling in. So,
Yeah, it is because the environment is totally opposite to that.
mhm,
It's like you've got to do something. You've got so much power, get out there and do something.
mhm. Yeah, I was doing something every minute of every day and then cleaning up
Exactly.
the messes. So,
Exactly.
yeah, something you said earlier, this just popped out in my head, but I forget exactly what you said, but I realized that like I can find the elephant in the room, and if there isn't one, I'll make it, like because I'm
Mhm.
bored. It seems, I don't know if you see that in my design, but I just feel like it's just something every time. It just is like this, or I've created that story in my head and I need to get rid of that story. So,
No, it's a 3-5, the whistleblower. I call it the whistleblower because
mhm,
experientially you know what works and what doesn't. And then
mhm,
as the 5, you're to universalize and empower people with that information.
mhm,
But do you think they want to hear about that?
mhm.
So when I tell people that, I know that there can be a problem, but again, you got to be truthful because the truth is what empowers you. That your design is your truth. Your design, you're empowered when you live your design. And this is why the 3-5 is so challenging because people don't want the truth. They want to be comfortable. They want someone that can lead them what they consider the primrose path, but it's imprisonment. Now, here's an example. See, you're the 3-5. You're tooting, you're the getting all the direction out there. This is what's going on. Think of the elephants. During the tsunamis, there was a tsunami in, I think, Indonesia, and there's this one guy there, and he had a group of elephants that would take people on these tours into the jungle. They were chained around that one pole. And he said, the morning of the tsunami, he had no idea, but all of a sudden the elephants started trumpeting. They started trumpeting, they were warning, they started pulling at their chain. And he would calm them down and say, everything's okay. He was sleepwalking. He didn't know. The elephants broke the chains. Never done
Mhm.
this because what do they say? Oh, if you put an elephant with a 3-foot chain, the elephant won't move. Well, that's a nice thought, but not necessarily so, because there was
Mhm.
a video that the guy shared because he was in shock. The elephants broke their chains. These are big, big chains. They
Mhm.
broke their chains and took to the hills. And he said he survived an absolute death because of the elephants, because he got away from the destruction, the tsunami. So
Wow.
that's a good metaphor for you. Yeah, you're saying the elephants are moving. They're going up in higher ground. We're here. What's going on here? And you saw other people going out and gathering fish in the pockets when the ocean went out before the tsunami came in, because it always drains the basin before the tsunami comes in.
Mhm.
And other people were asleep. They died. And you're saying,
Yeah.
hey, the elephants are breaking their chain. There's something we have to look here.
Mhm.
That's why the 3-5, what I found, very innovative, because you're saying this works, this doesn't, but you're going to face most of humanity that's asleep and has been brainwashed and controlled by thinking the answer is outside of them. That's what we call it, the inner authority versus the outer authority.
Mhm.
So keep warning about, just keep observing those elephants.
Yeah, for sure.
But but as a Sphinx, the awareness is there. See, this is why the Sphinx is very hard, because you're designed to know the direction, and you know if someone's not leading people in the right direction. If they're leading people off the cliff, you're not going to say, hey, go off the cliff. You're going to say, and a lot of people say, no, I'm going off the cliff. And then they project everything out. You think sensitivity sessions and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, I sense and know a lot of things.
But as a Sphinx, you're going to see it and you're going to know it's not correct. But
Mhm.
I would say you're Scorpio rising. I'm a Scorpio rising. It's being very astute in who are the correct people that you can share truths with, and who are the
Mhm.
people you just observe and listen. This is the listener. You listen to what they say and you see, check the feeling. Is this something where I can give them the whole information or just part of it? And maybe just ask them a question.
Yeah. Much pleasure to
Real
meet you.
pleasure. Okay.
Okay. Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later. See you.
Yeah.
Bye.